It's officially that time of year when everybody thinks they're a college basketball expert. So to actually help us prepare and know what's going on in the world of college basketball, I brought in a real expert, Paul Fritschner, who is a college basketball broadcaster, host of the Rebound Rundown. I've been tracking. You've been traveling like crazy for these games. Where are you off to next? Because it seems like there's not really much of a defined path at the current moment for which game you're doing next.
No, I appreciate you having me on. Yeah. So this weekend I was out in DC for the first two rounds of the CAA tournament, which was crazy, by the way. UNCW, the top seed, going down, and Charleston getting blown out last night against Towson. So some madness out there in the nation's capital. Flew back to Cincinnati, where I'm living right now, and we'll go to Indianapolis tonight for the Horizon League, see if Northern Kentucky can pull off. I don't want to say the upset. They're actually favored by 1.5, even though the seed lines wouldn't tell you that. They'll play Wright State tonight, see if they can win that, and then stay up there. Then we'll go to New York for the Big East tournament. Then we'll move over to Cleveland for the MAC tournament. And then if things keep working out, maybe we'll head on down to Pittsburgh for the A10 and see what's going on with Dayton down there. So yeah, it's a busy week. But look, this is the week that when you talk about everybody starting to pay attention to college basketball, right? And all the attention comes on the sport. Like, this is what we live for, man. This is the best week of the year. So yeah, we're all about it.
Yeah, no, and I'm fired up to get into hearing more of the smaller programs, because every year there's always somebody who comes out of nowhere. We're, of course, going to talk about Miami of Ohio in a little bit, them being the biggest story of the mid-majors. But just to get the immediate question for sports fans that are getting caught up with the tournament, they all know about Michigan, Duke, Arizona, UConn, Florida, the top teams that are on this collision course seemingly for getting to the national championship final. Who do you feel the most impressed by? For me, it's been Duke. The fact that they did what they just did and they've got some injuries and they still look as good as they do. Who is the team for you that you're like, man, if I'm putting all my chips on the table, if I'm putting a future out there, I think that this is the team that's going to win it?
Yeah, I would have said Duke, except Patrick Ngangba and Caleb Foster being hurt. That makes me really concerned. If those two guys are out for an extended period, now they're not going to lose to the 16 seed in the first round without those two guys. But without them, that does affect the longevity of their run in the NCAA tournament, I believe. Cameron Boozer is the best player in the country. He's going to win the National Player of the Year. He's going to win the Naismith. But I think their ceiling is a little more limited without those two guys if they don't play in the NCAA tournament. So I'm not going to say Duke right now, only because we don't know their health status. Also, they could come back right away and be 100%. We just don't know. So I don't want to say Duke right now without 100% knowing how those two guys are going to be able to play going in the tournament. I think the answer is Michigan. I think Michigan can beat you so many different ways. They can beat you in the post. They can beat you with their guard play. I know LJ Kaysen being hurt is again, injuries, but everybody at this point in the season is dealing with something, whether guys are completely out of a game, whether they're kind of banged up a little bit here and there. People are dealing with things. LJ Kaysen being hurt, yes, it's significant for Michigan because I think he was actually playing the starting role better than, I mean, he was making a significant impact before he got hurt. So I still think, though, Michigan would be my pick. Arizona would be not too far behind. I would say if you're going to argue Arizona with me, I'm not going to put up an argument because I think Arizona is that good. I just think Michigan is one little notch above.
UConn seems like they're the one team that's kind of like the most flawed. The Marquette loss was inexplicable. Of course, it ends with Hurley doing Hurley stuff. For context, so Hurley was, when I was at Rhode Island, I was playing at Rhode Island, Hurley was there, and it was always interesting to kind of like see him moving the way that he did. He was a very weird dude and just walking through the halls, would never acknowledge anybody. But to see another blow up like this, I feel like it may be priming him for what could be a good run for UConn, but at the same time, you can't lose to Marquette. You just can't do that.
You can't lose to Marquette. And the other thing with UConn is they've had a few of those, right? They've danced with fire against Seton Hall a couple of times, and Seton Hall's not a tournament team right now. Mm-hmm. So, and look, Seton Hall has always given UConn trouble. I don't know how Seton Hall's able to do it year in and year out, but they've kind of been the kryptonite for UConn over the last 4 or 5 years. But I don't have worries about Michigan or Arizona the same way that I look and say, how in the world did UConn just go to Marquette and lose? And I know it's hard to win on the road, but losing to Marquette ends up as the 7 seed in the Big East tournament. That's a tough look. I think UConn at their best, beating St. John's by a historic margin in Hartford a couple of weeks ago, that team can win the national championship without a doubt. The team that lost to Marquette has issues. Can you string together 6 St. John's performances in March? Dan Hurley has shown us they can. But when I have the cream of the crop at the top, where you have Michigan, where you have Duke if they're healthy, where you have Arizona, Florida, we haven't even mentioned Florida yet. When you have those teams, I think UConn might be just one half step below.
Yeah, no, I'm on the same page with you there. The inconsistency is something that you don't want to bank on. You want to go with the teams that have momentum. And a lot of times it feels like whoever might have that conference tournament momentum, an extreme example is NC State from not that long ago when they pulled all that energy together to go on the historic finish that they had in the tournament. Who do you see maybe as not an NC State type team, but a team that's outside of that top team discussion that we just had here that could pick up some steam going into conference tournament play and maybe ride it into March Madness?
This is at the mid-major level, and I'm just going to throw this in there, and they might not even make the tournament because they might lose tonight to Troy. I don't know if they're going to make a run in the NCAA tournament, but what Georgia Southern is doing right now in the Sun Belt to win 5 games in 5 days and potentially win 6 tonight, they're not NC State. They're not a power conference team. They could very easily lose in round 1, but that's a mid-major team that's been a fun story to keep an eye on. I don't know if you said this was coming out today or tomorrow. If you're putting this out tomorrow, they might have already lost. So disregard this entire segment completely.
It'll be out on Monday. We'll get it out on Monday.
I just wasted 20 seconds of your life if this comes out on Tuesday. So disregard
you
that.
might come off as prophetic. You might completely come off as prophetic if it is mistimed.
Exactly. But I would say there's a couple of teams. I really like Miami, Florida. We're going to talk about Miami, Ohio in a minute. I like Miami, Florida. The job that Jai Lucas has done at Miami this year, they're going to make the tournament in year 1. I believe the most wins, most first-year wins at Miami for a first-year head coach. I mean, he has done a phenomenal job this year with that team. There are some teams that have faded down the stretch that I'm not as in on as some of these others. So Miami's one team that I'm looking at. The crazy thing is a lot of these bubble teams that maybe could make a run in their conference tournaments, the bubble got decimated this weekend. Bubble teams all over the country. You look at the list of bubble teams, pretty much everybody lost. And we always talk about it. More teams play their way off the bubble than play their way on the bubble and into the tournament. Every year we say the same thing. The bubble stinks. Well, yeah, the bubble stinks because it's the bubble. It's the last teams that are trying to get into the tournament. And if anything, it's the best argument for not expanding the tournament. So I think that's a long-winded way of saying that. I think you look at a team like Miami, Florida, out of the ACC that doesn't get a ton of love anymore. They're a team that I would look at. Santa Clara, I think if Santa Clara can make the tournament, Santa Clara is another one. And they're trending in the right way as long as they don't really screw up in the conference tournament this week. I think Santa Clara is another team I'd keep my eye on.
Miami is an intriguing one. I always, having covered the college football season this past year, seeing the Miami fans as engaged as they were it's just good for the sport. They've got some of the most unique fans. They're super excited. So Miami going on a run would be really cool. You mentioned, though, you started off by giving us a mid-major, and you have a lot of close interaction with mid-major programs from some of the games you've been doing. Who is the one mid-major that you think that fans need to be the most aware of? The one that I love talking about is Stephen F. Austin, because they keep covering for me whenever I bet on them. They're a really good covering team, but it probably not Stephen F. Austin. But if there is that one mid-major program that you think college basketball fans need to be worried about, maybe upsetting someone and making a little bit of noise, who do you think that is?
We're going to talk about Miami, Ohio in a minute. Right. So I'm going to give you a couple of teams. One, High Point. High Point, I had them in their season opener, and I was so thoroughly impressed with the job that Finn Kleinman's done down there in year 1. I mean, that was his first game, and they have put together an athletic roster, a roster that can score, a roster that just won their conference tournament title, and a roster that has guys like all up and down the roster that can compete against high major competition. Cam Fletcher was at Kentucky, was at Florida State, was at Xavier, and now has found a home there. I mean, you could go up and down the list of players on that team and say to yourself, these guys can compete against a team in the first round. The other one, if they win it, if Miami, Ohio doesn't win the MAC, Akron can absolutely win a game in the NCAA tournament. They're a talented team. I don't know if they're going to win the MAC tournament because somehow, some way, Miami always finds a way to win. So I don't want to say any of this to discredit Miami. But if Miami does lose this week and Akron wins the conference tournament, Akron would be another one to keep an eye on, because Miami, I've covered Miami extremely close all year, been to almost every one of their home games. But Akron has been lingering, only one loss in conference play. Their only loss was to Miami. You know they're going to play with a chip on their shoulder. John Gross looking to get to the NCAA tournament, looking to win a game in the NCAA tournament. They're a really talented, efficient team that have been crushing the rest of the MAC. So those are a couple mid-majors to keep an eye on.
Akron's a good one to bring up too, because as I've been trying to get caught up on the teams outside of like the major scope, and I was looking at like the MAC, and I obviously been paying attention to Miami of Ohio, but which we'll talk. Let's get to them next. But I was shocked when I realized the MAC has two really good teams. No one has mentioned Akron at all, but you probably assume that there's no chance that if they made it to the MAC championship final, considering the whole issue of does Miami of Ohio even deserve to get in if they didn't win the MAC. Do you think that Akron maybe could have a shot to squeak in, or is it just too tough of a push?
No, they have to win in Cleveland this week. There's no doubt. They have some losses on their resume. They lost to Troy, and Troy's not a bad team, but they lost to Troy. They got blown out by Purdue, which, again, losing to Purdue is nothing to shake your head at, but it's not like they have that win to back it up. They have not a lot of losses, but they have a couple of losses this year that'll probably keep them out of the tournament. Not probably, they will. They have to go to Cleveland and win the MAC tournament this week. And they're the favorite to do it. They're not going to be my pick to do it, because no matter what, Miami has found a way to win. But if somebody does win it, it would not surprise me if Akron won it. I'm not going to pick them, but it wouldn't shock me. They're just a really talented team. They're coached well. And like I said, you look at Akron, you look at High Point. Liberty's another one. Coach McKay down there has done a great job with them, and they're just a really well-coached, disciplined team that knows how to win. And then there was one other team, I'm going to pull it up right here. One other team, Hofstra. Hofstra has two of the best players in the CAA if they're able to win their conference tournament on Tuesday night. So Liberty I mentioned, Hofstra I mentioned, High Point I mentioned, and there was one other team. I'm doing this in real time. This is terrible podcasting. This is awful podcasting. Northern Iowa won the Missouri Valley.
Yes.
They upset Belmont. I think we need to give Northern Iowa some love because the Belmont was upset in the tournament, I should say. And Belmont was the team that was getting all of the mid-major love this year. So, and it's funny to wrap up this long-winded way of talking about all of these mid-major. You asked me for one, and then you mentioned in there that I talked about
this is so much better though. I want as many as possible. I don't think anyone else would have given me this many options. I'm like, this is great. So sorry.
Well, maybe this is flooding information. Maybe this is doing your listeners a disservice because I'm mentioning so many, and then people are going to pick all of them. Then they're going to come back and tweet at me and say none of them won. But I'm at least giving you the ones that I think could win a game. And I haven't mentioned St. Louis because I don't think St. Louis is in the same crop of mid-majors. Like when you think mid-major, you think the 13 or 14 seed that could clip the 3 or 4 seed that stumbled into the tournament. Right. Like the Purdue that is playing terribly right now, but won enough games to be a 3 or 4 seed. And then that team loses in the first round. Like those are the teams I'm talking about. St. Louis is in a different category, even though technically they are a mid-major team out of the A-10. They're a different team.
Yeah, it's like if you brought up Gonzaga or something like that. Like technically, they're a mid-major, but like we all know that they're still like a giant brand and they're one of the best teams this year. All right, we got to talk about Miami of Ohio, though. This has been one of my favorite stories, and I've watched a lot of Miami of Ohio basketball, more than I would have expected that I would have done so at the beginning of the season. I was even out on Friday night with my roommate, and it was at the birthday party for my girlfriend, and it was loud as shit in there, but I still pulled out my phone to see what the score was and to watch part of that game. I got yelled at promptly, but I still tried to watch as much of that game as possible. I want to just know, though, because it's been really fun to track them, how realistic is it for them? Let's not put the grand aspiration on them for them to go on a run to maybe make like an Elite Eight, but for them to string together a win or two, how realistic is it for that to come to fruition? Or is there like a sad reality that they could get a really brutal matchup with a top SEC team or a Big Ten team and their run could just be cut super short?
Well, I don't think that there's any doubt that there is a certain type of team that Miami is hoping that they get in round one, right? Like I think a Purdue would be a good matchup for them. I think Purdue is almost the Power Five Miami when you think about it that way. Purdue would probably be the closest power conference comparison of teams that they might match up with from a seed perspective in the tournament. Miami, I would say, is looking at a 11 seed if they lose this week and probably a 10 seed if they win. Maybe they could sneak up into the 8-9 game. But if I'm Miami, I'd rather play it in the 7-10 game and maybe try your luck against a 2 seed in the second round if you can win. I think Miami has the capability to win a game in the tournament. Beyond that, it becomes matchups, right? So playing, let's say they're a 10 seed in the tournament right now. The 7 seeds are Kentucky, who has certainly stumbled, St. Mary's out in California, Miami, Florida, Villanova. You know, I look at a team like Louisville, if maybe Louisville is a matchup there, and certainly there'd be a ton of storylines. Pat Kelsey, Travis Steele, both on staff together at Xavier. So the committee, as much as they don't want to admit it publicly, loves storylines, and there are storylines to be had here. I think Louisville wouldn't be a terrible matchup for Miami. They have some size and athleticism, Louisville does, but I'm not impressed with their front court in general. And again, Louisville takes more threes than just about anybody in the country by percentage of shot taken. If you get into a 3-point shooting contest with Miami, that's exactly what they want. And then it turns into who's just going to make more. Miami's happy with that because that's what they do. They get up and down the floor. They take a ton of threes. They want to score a ton of points. They're not the strongest defensive team. They're not the most athletic team, but you know what they are? They're an experienced team that knows how to win. And you can say, Paul, that's just a general statement, right? That just sounds like, what kind of analysis is that? They know how to win. In today's day and age of college basketball, to be able to retain your team, they only have one transfer on this team that is an impact player this year, Almar Atlason. He came over from Bradley, I believe, and he has made a massive impact on this team, and he's the only transfer they took. Now, Peter Suter transferred into the program last year, but as far as transfers this year, he's the only one. And so you look at that combined with the freshman that they brought in, Trey Perry has been fantastic. Perry, I mean, the job that he has done coming off the bench as a point guard. He started in the Western Michigan game, then gets the game-winning bucket. They built this roster on retention. They built it on freshmen. They have experienced players that know how to win, and they have not backed down from any moment where the lights get too bright. And to me, that will make a difference, that they have played in sold-out arenas in front of tens of thousands of people night in and night out. It's not going to make a difference for them. It's not one of these mid-major teams that gets the NCAA tournament and you see the logo on the floor and you see the name on the other jersey. They're not going to be intimidated by any of that. And so for that reason, I do think that Miami is capable of winning a game. Beyond that, if they get a favorable matchup, could they win a second game? I think they're talented enough to do it. They just need to put together a couple of good shooting performances because that's what they rely on.
Yeah. I think it's safe to say that once more people get like really caught up right when the tournament starts, they very easily could become like America's team and the team that everybody's rooting for. If they do win that first round matchup, it'll be really fun to see. Paul, this was awesome to help me learn more about the mid-majors, the show listeners to learn more about the mid-majors, and hopefully everybody comes away a lot more educated, as things are going to be so fun over the next couple of weeks. Where can people maybe catch anything that you've got coming out, or just where can people follow along with your coverage during the conference tournaments in March Madness?
Yeah, well, you can follow me on Twitter, but you can also, I would point you to the Rebound Rundown as well. Follow the Rebound Rundown. You can subscribe to it. It's a daily podcast that comes into your feed every single morning, about 10 to 20 minutes. So it's perfect for your morning commute. It's just the real quick hitters, the easy bullets, the kind of surface level stuff that you need to know in the beginning of the show. And then I dig a little deeper toward the end of the show on the national stuff. So it's just a good way to get your day started. If you're heading into the office and you want to be able to, be around a water cooler and talk about what you need to know in the sport, the Rebound Rundown, I have you covered there. So I appreciate you having me on anytime. Yeah. If you want to have me on again, I'm happy to do it.
I'm going to steal you again, I'm sure, over the next few weeks. But Paul, this was great. I'm glad that we got to connect, and it'll be exciting to see if maybe one of these smaller programs could put together a little bit of a run.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.